up, everybody? It's Goddess Z, and I'm here with another podcast episode on holistic and spiritual AF. That's what I'm talking about, guys. We are in season two. I just kind of randomly started season two, like in the middle of the year somewhere, like 2 years later. But that is okay. We don't need any kind of order or method as to why we're doing stuff. We're just moving in alignment with the ancestors, okay? And I hope everybody has been taking care of themselves, mind, body, and spirit, because that is what it's all about. If either one of those things are out of balance, then we are out of balance. And that's what we talk about on this podcast episode. I have all sorts of guests on here talking about ancestral healing, metaphysics, the divine feminine, and we are bringing in all sorts of tools and resources that you can actually use in your life, as well as people sharing their stories as to how they got to where they are and where they came from. Okay. So if you're into that type of thing, make sure you hit that subscribe, that like, that follow, depending on what platform you're listening on. This podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere that podcast episodes are being played now. I am syndicated everywhere. Okay. And then, of course, I can also be found on social media at Holistic and Spiritual AF. If you're watching this video, that's down at the bottom of the screen here. That's Holistic and Spiritual AF and spelled out. And I'm all over the place: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, Substack. So definitely check out my website, and I'll have the contact information and everything down in the description, as well as today's guest information down in the script description as well. Okay. So if you know me, I always got to get a little bit of business out of the way before we jump into the podcast episode. So if you're impatient like me, then go ahead and skip on over about 3-4 minutes, and you will be in this divine episode today, which you don't want to miss, because I'm actually having my guest, Miss Toya Iyamio. She's a spiritualist, a root worker, and a keeper of ancestral traditions. And for those of you that know me, you know that I'm passionate about my ancestors. Okay, so go ahead and jump over there, and I'll catch you on the other side. For those of you who want to stick around and listen to the business, I just got a few things today. I actually got a class coming up that's going to be on Wednesday, July the 31st, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and that is the Reclaiming Our Roots and Healing class. Okay, this is for my women of the diaspora, my womb holders, my divine feminine, the keepers of the lineage. I am calling you forth. Okay, so we're going to talk about reclaiming our roots. We're going to actually be bringing in the roots, the actual herbal roots, as well as talking about connecting with our ancestral roots. And we will be incorporating some particular practices and things that you can take home with you and start to incorporate in your life. So you don't want to miss that. Right now, I think the early bird pricing is still going on, so check that out at the website. Okay, Wednesday, July the 31st, that's 7:30 p.m. Let's see what else I got going on. I think the last time I told you guys, the website is up. Holistic and Spiritual AF. Look at us branding all the way across the board. So be sure to check that out, because that's got everything that I'm talking about and everything that you can find me and what's coming up next. And of course, you can also join the mailing list so that you can get access to what's happening that way as well. Okay. So with that being said, you know what? Let me go ahead and talk about my guest today. Okay. This is going to be Miss Toya. I just said that. Iyamio. She's a spiritualist, root worker, and keeper of ancestral traditions. From a young age, Toya realized that she was blessed with a gift that allowed her to see and sense what others could not. She has walked the path of a root worker throughout her adult life and stands fully in her truth. I am who I say I am. I love that. That's so powerful. Together, we're going to be diving into sacred practices like Hoodoo, Rootwork, Bibliomancy, and Conjure, and explore the ancestral lineage and cultural richness of the Gullah Geechee people. Toya speaks on the power of divination, walking with your ancestors, and reclaiming your spiritual sovereignty through traditional Black, African, and indigenous spiritual systems. Okay, this episode is a real potent reminder that we come from people who knew how to pray, how to heal, and how to survive. So make sure that you listen to this podcast episode, okay, all the way to the end, because it truly is a good, great podcast episode. And this was one of the appointed podcast guests from my ancestors. So definitely, without me talking anymore, let me go ahead and jump into it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Miss Toya, for joining me. I am super excited to have you on this podcast. I know that my guests are going to be excited to hear the topics that you're talking about today. Because, like I was talking about before we started, I'm
Hmm.
shifting. The ancestors are calling me to be more in purpose and more in alignment with who it is that I truly am. And so I'm very passionate about my ancestors. Everybody that knows me knows that. And so are you. You're into a lot of the things that I'm into, and then some. So you're into hoodoo, divination, bibliomancy, root work,
Hmm.
conjure, Gullah Geechee, and ancestor work. So I'm
Hmm.
really interested to hear about your journey. Like, how did your journey get started? How did you know that this was a calling for you? Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, I am Gullah Geechee. That's the first
Oh,
thing. So,
okay.
I'm here. I never left. I never left. My family is from Beaufort.
Okay.
Okay. So the story how I got started, this is something that's definitely in my bloodline. I grew up with this. My uncle was a root worker. My grandmother's sister was a worker. My grandma was a root worker, but my grandmother's sister, my aunt Val, was more known. As a matter of fact, they made a movie about her, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Minerva, that's
Okay.
my aunt in real life.
Nice. And I
So,
remember that movie.
mhm. So I grew up in it, but I didn't think that it was something that nobody else did. When you grow up with something and you see it every day, you think it's normal. So to me, it was normal. You know, um, we still went to church, but we still had people who will call or who will come to the house for help. So that's what it was always about. Somebody needing some help. Somebody got something on them. Somebody's sick. You know what I'm saying? Somebody needs some help. So when I was young, I'm talking about from the time I could go walk. I would follow my uncle. So my uncle was pretty much like my dad. Um, Everywhere he went, basically, if I didn't get to go, I was screaming and hollering and all this other stuff to go, right? But as time went on and I got older, I saw the dedication that he had to put into it. I mean, not having a life, basically. Um, Everything revolved around helping somebody, everything revolved around family. And when I was 20, I got pregnant when I was 20 with my oldest daughter. And he was mad at me. He didn't speak to me for like 7 months because he said I was supposed to do exactly what he did, meaning that I wasn't supposed to have any kids right then. I was supposed to carry on with the work, whatever. But I told him I didn't want to do that. I want to go out. I mean, oh shit, I want to go.
Right.
So, you know, he was upset. He was upset, but he also told me you'll be back. So
Mm.
years later, here I am. I'm back. So it started from growing up. I grew up with it. So to me, it's just something that we did.
I love that, and I don't know how I missed that. And when you say Beaufort, is that Louisiana? Um,
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay, Geechee.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that and the movie, I remember that. I love that movie when it came out. I want to watch it again. It's very interesting story. And then how you talked about you grew up with it. Like
Yeah.
me, I had to fight for it, you know what I'm saying? Because I
Hmm.
came from this traditional religious background. Nobody was talking about any of this stuff, any kind of roots and ancestry, and I kind of fell into it. So that's got to be that's a blessing to be able to grow up with it. But I can see you saying that, hey, I don't want to do this. I'm young. I don't. This is a lot of responsibility you gave up.
Yes.
Yes, but you know what? You still ended up coming back around to it because it's
Right on
in
back around.
it's in you, and it's
Right on
part of
back
who you're
around.
supposed to be. So awesome. I
Hmm.
love that. That's why I always ask people in the beginning, how things got started with them. So since you talked about that and there's so much responsibility there, that's one of my questions. So, like with the spiritual, what's the spiritual responsibility of a root worker and a conjure woman?
One of the biggest responsibilities that I can say is discipline.
Hmm.
Um, because there's a lot of things that you want to do, a lot of things that you want to say that you can't, so you have to remember you got to always put others before yourself. And when I say others, they can be family members or, people that you associated with, people that you're doing work for, clients, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, um, dealing in spirituality, you are that person's, how can I say it? You become that person's everything. They trust you. You know, they need you to do what's right by them. They need you to keep everything confidential. They need you to tell them what's right, what's wrong. And then when it comes to the discipline part with your family, how this works is if somebody is trying to get to you or do something to you, if they can't get to you, they get to the closest thing, which is your family, right?
That's right.
So you have to keep all of that together. So to me, the biggest thing is discipline.
That is
And
a
that's
big
why I
one.
didn't want to do it when I was younger because I was not disciplined. I
That's
wasn't.
right. You're so right about that. That is this it is a lot of responsibility. And like you said, and
Mhm.
and when you're dealing with sometimes you know stuff. You just know stuff about people you want to tell them, but it may not be to tell them. It may
Right.
be for them to find out. That to me I think is one of the hardest things. Um but yeah, that's a lot of responsibility. So when working with the ancestral spirits, that's also a lot of responsibility. Would you say that discipline's one of the biggest things there as well, or
Obedience.
ooh, you on the money with that. Yes, indeed. Because sometimes I still do
It's
what I want to do,
obedience.
and I find I
Hey,
I
me
find
too.
out every time. My ancestors they tell me, but I'm still, sometimes I'm gonna do it anyway,
Yeah.
and
Because you're human. We're
yeah.
human.
I'll do it anyway. And I find out. And then I find out just like they told me. So
Yep.
obedience, that's a good one. So good stuff. So when did you decide that, okay, I'm gonna shift and start doing this? Like you ran off and did your own thing when you were young,
Mhm.
had your baby. When did you hear the calling that, okay, I gotta come back home and do what it is that I was born to do?
Well, it was two situations. The first situation was when my uncle got sick. Um, and me and him were very close. We would talk every day. If we didn't talk every day, we saw each other or whatever the case may be. We were very, very close. And when he got sick, I didn't want to accept the fact that he was dying. And he knew that he was dying because he kept telling me, what was going on. And that Wednesday before he passed, he came to the house and he pulled up in the front yard. He said, "Well, I got something to tell you." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I need to tell you what to do in case I die." I'm like, "Ain't nothing gonna happen to you." That made me flip because I didn't want to hear that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm,
But needless to say, he died that Saturday,
mhm,
same week. Um, and it's like if I didn't, then it would die out, right?
mhm,
So I said, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep it together for family. I'm not gonna worry about helping anybody else. I'm just not gonna do that because it's a lot. It takes a lot. It's a lot of sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice. You
it
gotta
is.
sacrifice your time away from your children. Um, Places they want to go, you can't go because you're obligated. You got to get back to the community. It's a lot. It's a lot of things that you have to do. Um, and the second thing that happened was because it always gets a little worse when you don't listen. Something else happens. It
Yep.
makes it a little worse, right? So, my mother got sick and was told that she had to get on dialysis. So she told me, she said, "Well, I don't know what to do. Should I get on dialysis or should I not?" I said, "Well, either way, whether you choose to, if you don't, I'm still going to be there for you." So she decided to get on dialysis, and I was in Charleston at the time. And I told my students, I was like, "Okay, now y'all want me to go home, you know what I'm saying, and take care of her. There has to be a way that I can still maintain take care of my children, maintain this lifestyle, and take care of my mama. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Something has to happen." So it was like I was being pushed and being pushed and being pushed to put myself out on the internet. It was not my thing to get on the internet. It wasn't.
Mhm.
I was getting divination done by other people, and they were saying, "You need to do this, and you need to do that, and you need to do this." Um, so to make a long story short, once I decided that this is what I was going to do, I was going to um teach certain things when it came to Hoodoo or the Gullah community um, through TikTok. It was where I went first.
Mhm.
And in a matter of a month, I went from however many followers to 40 something thousand followers. So that's when I knew, you know what I'm saying? This is what it is. But that's what happened. It just went from one thing to another to another. It was just a progressional push. Like if you don't do this, then something else gonna happen.
Yep.
So I was like, let me just go ahead and get it over with.
Well,
So
good.
that's what happened.
I'm glad you did because as you can see, we're getting to that place now where people are activating things inside of themselves. They waking up, they looking, they seeking for answers, and you got this, what I'm saying, this
Mhm.
thing. That's why you're here right now. And TikTok, so that's where I found you. It was either TikTok, yeah, TikTok first, and then I went over to YouTube and I checked out your videos and I was like, yeah. And I actually think when I saw you with the 40,000 something, I was like, oh, she's gonna be too busy. so so I'm glad you doing your work, you doing your stuff, and so you
Mhm.
helping people. And so like you said, you do a lot of conjure, you're Gullah Geechee, it all kind of rolls into each other.
Mhm.
Tell me about the bibliomancy. I want to come back to how you help people, but I really want to know about that. So bibliomancy, tell us what that is and how you work with that.
Okay, so bibliomancy is divining using scriptures or doing work using scriptures.
Ah, okay.
So I'm trying to sum it up to where somebody who's listening will understand exactly what I'm saying. So there are multiple scriptures, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of times in church we are taught to, if you read this scripture, read it from verse 1 to verse 7. That's what you do, right? But when it comes to the work part or the conjure part or calling the spirits part, you merge different scriptures. It's like you take a
Hmm.
scripture from this book and then you take a scripture from that book and then you put yourself in it, you put your situation in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're having your higher power, God, whomever, to move on your behalf, as well as those ancestors that were into the church or were
Yes.
into religion, or the spirits that's attached to the bloodline that were attached to your ancestors, the church mothers and the deacons and the elders,
Hmm.
that were attached to them. You calling all of them to you because they recognize what you're saying. You speak in their language.
Right.
So as long as you speak in the language, that's when you get things begin to move.
Oh, I love it. Sometimes I be doing stuff and I don't know what to call it, and that's what it is. I think I talked about it on the episode before. How I got started with Hoodoo was just real, like random. I ended up where I was
Mhm.
supposed to be in a Facebook group, and I ended up taking a class, like it was like a free class type thing, but I really enjoyed it because we got to do divination. We practiced divination with each other. I tapped into the herbs, and that was huge for me because that opened
Mhm.
up a whole nother realm for me. And I was like, wait a minute, I never really, experienced this lifetime before. So I started getting into the scriptures, I started getting into books and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so it was already in me. Like you said, it activated that thing inside of me. And so I started using the scriptures, but the way you described it by putting myself into the scriptures,
Mhm.
that's something that I hadn't done. I love the Old Testament, love the Psalms and all them powerful scriptures there. But I also
Mhm.
noticed that I had ancestors, like you said, that were into the church. So like
Right.
certain music, like I
It
like
makes
some
spirit
certain type
move.
of
Mhm.
yes, certain gospel music I listen to because I know that's them. They
Yeah.
get to moving. That's their stuff. And so I do that sometimes because I know that there were some ancestors that was heavy in the church and they were serious
Mhm.
about it. And I also had on my mom's side, those were the hoodoo ancestors. And then on my
Mhm.
dad's side, because they can be traced back to Africa, because he's Caribbean, that was my Ifa Yoruba side. So
Okay.
that's really exciting actually too. That's something new that I started doing is the different sides, the paternal and the maternal lineage, and really connecting with them is also really exciting. But I love how you talked about bibliomancy. It's like sometimes we out here doing stuff and don't know what it's called, but it's just, being activated in us. And that's
Mhm.
powerful. I do know that the scriptures are powerful too. So tell me about what some misconceptions are about hoodoo that you hear out there.
Okay. So I'm gonna say the very first one that really, really irks my soul. Hoodoo is not what this is. This is just a word that was placed on it by marketeers, right? They
Mhm.
had to put a name on it to package it to sell it, right? Um, but we just call it work or the Lord's work.
Mm.
That's what it's called around here. It's the Lord's work. You're doing the Lord's work, right? And an- another misconception is that you have to separate this from that, from this. If
Mhm.
I'm working hoodoo, then I can't go to church. Who told you that?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, I'm a root worker, then I can't deal with Christians. You got some of the biggest Christians that
That's what
were
I
the most
say.
powerful root workers and conjurers. And you know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Bishop C.H.
Um,
Mason.
Not only that, Bishop Bonner, you know, a lot of people don't look at it for what it is because when you step inside of my mother was apostolic, right? So
Mhm.
when you step inside the vestibule and you feel the spirit when you before you even enter the sanctuary. So the purpose of you going into the sanctuary is not so much to hear the message that the elder or the pastor is preaching. You communing with the spirits of that building. That's what you're
Mhm.
there for. You there for to commune with the spirits, and you're going to get what you need from the spirits. And you can see how the spirit fall from this person to that person or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. And it's the same thing in other African traditions.
Yep.
When I went to Ile, I could see how the spirit was falling when they were doing drumming. Same thing,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? But it's just a different method of doing it. Um, so that's one of the biggest misconceptions that you have to separate this from that. And I think that's made a lot of people weaker. They don't
Yeah.
have their own power because they're so busy trying to be something what somebody think they should be
Exactly.
versus who they are. Who are you? Find out who you
Exactly.
are really. Um, Another misconception is that you don't have to put in any type of work.
Oh
I don't care
God.
what type of magic, ancestor work, or whatever you're doing. You still got to put in some type of physical work or make a
Mhm.
conscious decision and a conscious effort to change some things about yourself. In order for you to become a better person. I can go on and on.
You know what? I'd say that all the time. Every episode, I say, y'all hear that? You got to do the work. I don't know how many times I got to say that. You have got to do the inner work. No matter what you're trying to do, it's no quick fix. It's no cheat code out
It's
there.
not.
The ashe and the energy that you put into what you're doing is the magic. That's the ritual. Like people don't get that.
I'm glad you said that. What people don't understand is the ashe or the anointing,
Mhm.
right? We say anointing here, say ashe in ATRs, right? So you don't receive that without the struggle.
That's right.
The struggle is what gives you the power to overcome and to be in the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to navigate through things and come up with different answers to different situations. And spirits come because they've seen the dedication and the work that you put in, and what your bloodline has put into it, and the sacrifices that you've made. It's not saying that we're perfect people because we're not.
No.
We're not. I will cut somebody out just as fast as I feel like it. You get what I'm saying? I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not a perfect person at all.
Mhm.
But what I have come to understand is that I have to walk in the authority of who I am, and I
Mhm.
recommend that for anybody else. Don't let anybody lead you by the nose.
That's what's up. I love that, and that's true. And that probably was the best thing that I learned from root work, hoodoo,
Hmm.
is who I am. I had
Hmm.
to go through that to identify who I am, my own individual self, not following behind one thing. And as a result, I think that's why I gravitated to that more. It was accessible, and I could incorporate different things coming from.
Right.
And that's what I love about that. So yeah, still got to do the work, y'all. No cheat codes. Ain't nobody
Still got
waving
to
no
do the
wand.
work.
Don't let social
No
media
Harry
fool you.
Potter. No
I
Harry
love
Potter
it.
here.
I know. So Gullah Geechee, this is really
Hmm.
exciting. So you coming from that lineage and people coming
Hmm.
to you. How are you able to help them? Because I know with Gullah Geechee and certain different types of thing, it has to be in your bloodline.
Mhm.
Um, how can you help people who are not Gullah Geechee? Like, how do you help people like that?
Well, we're all linked somehow,
Hmm.
right? Um, but what happens is when you're doing ancestor work, you go to that person's ancestors, and
Yeah,
then together you commune and figure out what it is that needs to be done or what this person is overlooking. You know, when you go to their ancestors, but you also have your ancestors with you when you go um, to them. A lot of people tend to forget that everything happens in the spirit before it happens in the physical, right? So if
that's right.
you're going even for yourself, if you're petitioning for something to happen, you need to go through prayer or in the spirit in order to get other spirits to move and work on your behalf. So that's how I would help somebody who is not from this region or from this culture.
Hmm. Okay, that makes total sense, and you can't go wrong there if you're able to, get them connected with their ancestors, and you bring
Hmm.
yours, and then find out what they're supposed to do. I love it. Let's see. So, um, hmm. Oh yeah, tell me about the herbs. Like, do you work with the herbs at all in your practices?
What I do is I work with what's local.
That's true. That's my
Um,
ancestors. They don't require me spending a lot. I like that.
yeah, I work with what's local, and you can pretty much tell whatever herb as long as you know the property. And sometimes you don't even
Hmm.
have to know the property. You can conjure the spirit of that herb to do what you need it to do, especially if you grow it yourself. You're talking to it every day, you
Hmm.
water it, you telling it what you need for it to do for you. I'm taking care of you. I need you to take care of me. I need you to heal this. I need you to do that. You know, um, another thing, another root that I like to work with is hydron. Um, People tend to look at hydron root as just a root, but that is the actual essence, the spirit of Hydron the Conqueror himself.
Hmm.
So when you're working with that root, you're actually conjuring up the spirit of Hydron. So you're going to work with that a little bit different than what you would do with, I would say, pine or life everlasting or something like that. It will be a little bit different because you actually have a spirit that's attached to that root.
Okay.
Um, but I basically use herbs for healing,
Yeah, that's what I was
basically
gonna
for
say.
healing.
That's what I was gonna say. I think I learned the other way first.
Hmm.
Um, but my spirit, because that's a lot of what I do, facilitator of healing. So like when you were talking
Hmm.
about, oh, I work with the ancestors, and I do the same thing with healing. I
Hmm.
work so yeah, that definitely is, I think, a part of my toolbox and my tool belt is to start learning about the herbs. I know quite a bit of the properties, so like I said, when I tapped into it, it was like meeting an old friend. That's what it
Hmm.
felt like. It really felt like, oh yeah, like why did I forget about this? And I had this sweet relationship with the herbs. I just haven't been disciplined. That's my problem. I ain't been disciplined. I haven't been obedient. And then the more that you're talking about, like I want to live my life. It's a lot of
Yeah,
responsibility. I'm like,
a
it's
lot.
a lot of responsibility. But like I said, my ancestors, they know what they doing. They was like, get her. Put her. They was like, get her on the podcast. It's never an accident. So okay, good. So we talked about bibliomancy, we talked about the misconceptions of hoodoo, we talked a little bit about the Gullah Geechee. I don't know how much of your tradition you can share, but like what are some of the ways that you preserve the sacred teachings of Gullah Geechee in your community? Is that like a closed
That's
type of
close.
closed? There you go.
That's close. But this is what I want people to understand about the Gullah Geechee. Um, we were actually named after the Ogeechee Indians because it's the Ogeechee River, that runs between South Carolina and Georgia, right? So there's a lot of indigenous that is intertwined in the Gullah Geechee as well. But it's like we're a melting pot of people because on Sullivan's Island was where the slave port was. So, 70, 80% of the slaves that were brought here were brought through this part of the country. You know what I'm saying? And then either
Mhm.
taken on someplace else or sold in Charleston or in Beaufort, right? So a way that we preserve is that we try not to get too far ahead of ourselves, meaning not to get too far away from the teachings of the grandmothers and the great grandmothers.
Mhm.
The language, a lot of times when we talk, people are like, what do you say? But we understand each other.
Right.
And that's how we were taught to talk, to where we understand, to where no outside people, like they will say, will understand what we're saying. Um, it's certain ways that we do things that they don't do things anywhere else. It's just us. Not saying that we're better than anybody else, but it's hard to keep the ways of the ancestors when it comes to modern technology and the internet and everybody wanting to learn something, and everybody wanting to tell somebody something. you know it's hard with that. But one of the ways that I do it with my children is I show them things. I let them see me do certain things. I don't say, oh, well, you need to come and learn this. No, I let them see me doing these things. So therefore they know how um to navigate when it comes to their families. Because that's really what it is, keeping the
Mhm.
families together, keeping everybody healthy, keeping everybody alive, keeping everybody um stable,
Right.
being able to take care of themselves. Um, my grandmother was a midwife. Her
Okay.
sister was a midwife. Um, so when it came to certain things with babies, I learned that by watching her. Like, you can shape a baby's nose, you can
Mhm.
mold their head. You know what I'm saying? You can
Mhm.
hold them to your stomach when they have like gas, and your body will draw that pain from the baby. It's just certain things that we learn
Mhm.
within the community that we carry on. But it's hard to get somebody to sit and listen.
It is. It really is, especially when you talked about the children. I'm glad you said that because with my girls, like I said, I had to catch up. I had to learn stuff from not outside, a lot of outside teaching, and
Hmm.
so by the time I started tapping into my ancestors consciously, I think my girls were like 13 and 15.
Hmm.
So they had been accustomed to a certain way. Now I'm trying to teach them this stuff. And I feel like it was a whole lot for them, and they were kind of like, "We don't want to do this. We just want to go.
It's too
We just want
much.
to do what we was doing before. Go watch Disney Channel."
Yeah,
And
that's too much.
yeah, yeah. So now they're at the age they know a lot, but they don't do anything. But they living their life, pretty much. And so I realized I got to pull back on that, and I try to find ways that I can,
But they're
hopefully
not gonna
some.
forget it.
Yes, that's all I could think of is like one day when they come to, get older, they'll come around to it and think,
Not
start
only
asking
that,
questions.
when they need it, they're going to remember what you said. And that's the
Yeah,
whole purpose. That's
that's
the
so
whole
true.
purpose. There's a scripture that says, train a child in the way that they should go and they will not depart. It's the same thing when you train them a certain way. I don't care what they go out in life and do, they know better. They
Yep.
know certain things that you taught them along the way. So they're not going to forget that. They may not want to hear it now, and I'm a living witness to that because
Yes.
that was once me. So, but they will come back to it when the time is right, and they will have the tools because you gave them the tools.
Yeah.
So you're doing good.
Yeah. And and then on top of that, my oldest daughter, she has a baby. So that's another reason with the herbs. I'm like, oh man, I got to start putting together this stuff and to send them wellness packages and stuff like that of different types of herbs and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I've been actually creating a book with that. So we'll have something.
Okay.
We're starting our little lineage. I mean, we came a long way though, from where I came from, which was highly religious, and then it wasn't Christian. Like, so I just was
Hmm.
all messed up. But it was perfect for me because it kickstarted me on my spiritual journey in a way that I
Hmm.
would have never done before. Okay, so good, good. We talked about a lot of good stuff. So, oh, divination. We left divination off. Now, divination is a wide topic. Tell me about divination to you and maybe some of the different styles of divination that you use.
Okay, so divination is pretty much consulting spirit to see what's going on, right? What I have come to realize, this is just I'm speaking for me. Um, I do readings for people, and these cards. What I have come to realize about these cards is that they are a tool
Oh, I
that's
got
used
them.
for the person. Because it's a difference between somebody who's a tarot reader and somebody who actually divines.
Right.
It's different, right? So for me, I get the messages before the person even gets on the phone or the person gets to the house or whatever the case may be. The spirit is already talking. So when the cards come out, all the cards are doing is confirming what the spirit already told me for that person to see, right? A lot of times I may throw one or two cards and I'll give a whole 30, 45 minute reading because spirit, that's how spirit moves. Another thing that I do is try to get it down. Some people use pendulums, right?
Mm,
So what I do, and my uncle taught me this years ago, I use skeleton keys. So I let the
okay.
skeleton keys tell me, yes, no, who it is, and all this other stuff. Um, or different it's like an E5, I'll use OB or whatever the case may be, but that's different. But when it comes to hoodoo, basically I'll throw bones, I'll use shells, the cards, or just I use the Bible or just mediumship.
Yep. Whatever works for you and whatever you can get the
Hmm.
answers from. So yeah, that's good. I was the pendulum. I think I started out with that a long time ago. That when I started tapping into stuff, it was certain things that let me know, this something else is going on out there.
Okay,
I was like, this thing is moving. So I was
this
like,
thing
it's
is
really
swinging, honey.
moving, yeah, like really moving, and that's what really got me started. I was like, okay, this is real. I want to know what else, and it's been a journey ever since.
Hmm.
But for some reason, I fell off of stuff and I go into something else. But with the tarot, I came back around. I've been doing this now for probably about 2 months, and I don't know what. Like I said, I just moved with spirit, and I just been running these cards. But it was like you just described. Before, I was a tarot reader. I was just learning how and, looking it up and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Now I was running. I'm like, why am I running the cards on the same question? But in the process, I was receiving messages. So it was teaching me, spirit just taking me through a different initiation of some sort. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
so I'm over here with mine too, just right next to me. And
Yeah.
so I love it. And then the bones, that's something that I'm actually about to start learning as well. Everything that I learn has to be from my ancestors. I've had when it comes to this, for some reason, I don't know why it's like that. And for some reason, it has to be like that. And I actually, one of the
Hmm.
last readings that I had from a Babalao, that's what he said. I was mad. I wanted to know the answer. And he was like, for some reason, you got to do this yourself. It has to be that
But
way
you know
for
what?
you.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing that you had a Bible out that actually told you the truth.
Yeah, that's true. And I was so mad. I wanted something. I don't know what I wanted, but I ended up having to go out there, and that's kind of when I tapped into. I think maybe it was Hoodoo after that, but yeah. And so I pretty much just kind of resigned myself to the fact that my ancestors, they just have to be the ones. And sometimes, to me, I think they won't allow me to rely on somebody else. It
Right.
has to come from me, even if it's something I don't want to hear. And I don't like that. I would rather blame somebody, I guess. But yes, I want to be like, oh, they
Join the
told
club.
me. They like, you
Join
know
the
better than
club.
that.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered everything. So tell me about how you help people when they come to you. I know you do divinations for them.
Hmm.
You do readings for them. If somebody is looking for um, how to get started in this, like let's say for instance somebody like me who has no background and they just looking the spirit being called to something. How would you
What
help
I
us?
do is I will do divination first because I have to see if this is what is this for you or is it something else? You know what I'm saying that you're supposed to be doing. Just because we're black and then descendants of slaves, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to practice voodoo, and that's
Right.
another misconception, right? Then after that, if the ancestors say, okay, well they need such and such, they need to learn this, they need to learn that. I offer mentor mentorship as well.
Okay.
And through the mentorship, what I'll do is we sit down and then I'll go with your spirits and I go with mine to see what it is that you need to learn. Um, Other things that I do is I do cleanses.
Mm,
If somebody has, either a spirit on them or sickness on them or something like that. I do a lot of road opening work.
mm,
And I do a lot of court case work.
mm.
So for me, it's usually removing something,
Yeah,
court case work, um, or road opening work, and money work. Those four things that I'm constantly doing for people or mentorship.
I love it. And I want to kind of touch on the the spiritual cleansing. Please
Mhm.
talk about the importance of that because we have people walking around who've never been spiritually cleansed before. Like, and it's yeah.
Okay, so what happens is even if you're not practicing anything, right?
Hmm.
We walk around and we're picking up all types of different energies from different people. So imagining when you're opening up a portal. I don't care what it is you're using. If you're calling on a spirit, you're lighting a candle, you're opening up a portal, right? And you're inviting all these things to you. A lot of people don't even know how to close out
Right.
and they'll just blow the candle out and go on about the business, right? So what happens is you become a little bit heavier. You
Hmm.
got more on you, more weight, more weight. You get tired. You're spiritually drained. Sometimes your money start going. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you get sick or whatever the case may be. But spiritual hygiene helps you to identify when something is not right.
Yes.
So if you're always walking around with something wrong, how you gonna know when something is really wrong? You get what I'm saying? You're not gonna know. So it's very important. But a lot of people think that okay, well, I gotta ball 15 herbs and do all this other stuff, and
Yeah.
it becomes so tedious, so they don't want to do it, right? So I don't know where you're from, but what my grandma used to do was to get like a half a cup of bleach and put it in the tub when we were
Hmm.
kids. And I was like, well, what? I always wanted to wash the bleach. But as I got older, I know what it was. It was removing negative energy
Hmm.
off of me, and off of us. Um, Even if you're just praying, you in the
Yeah.
shower, you praying. A lot of times you get cleansed in the cemetery. A lot of people think you just go to the cemetery for left-handed work. And that's not what it is. Sometimes you have to send things back with the dead. If somebody sent death to you, don't you think you need to send it back with the dead?
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
You have to be logical about it. But it is highly important to stay on top of spiritual hygiene because it can cut back on spiritual psychosis,
Mm.
um, ego,
Yeah.
identity crisis,
Yes.
trying to be somebody else. You don't know who you are, so you're so busy trying to clone anybody that come next to you. You know,
Hmm.
um, and it keeps your mind focused. It keeps your
Yeah.
mind focused.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. And I actually did a class recently, like 2 months ago, on spiritual hygiene. Like and like you said, it doesn't have to be this big elaborate kind of thing. You could just be in the shower. Is your intention is powerful. You do what you got to do, but doing it on a regular basis, like you said, helps you to be in tune with your spirit body. So when something
Mhm.
is off, you sense it right away if it's able to get
Yeah,
in. And that to
right.
me is one of the main purposes of me working with my ancestors. And the beauty of that is because when something's off, I know it. I've got different type of ancestors for different things. Ain't too much getting through, and I love that.
Right.
But for most people, they don't know that. Like you said, they just walk around opening portals. They on social media doing all kind of stuff. And I told 'em,
Girl.
I
Oh,
tell them all the time, y'all
another
got this
one.
is real. This is not TV, yo. This is
Another thing that people neglect is cleaning their house. Cleaning
that
your
too.
house and cleaning your car.
Yes, yes. My ancestors don't play that. This house got to be clean, and I love that because people don't anybody just don't come in my house. It's just
Right.
I've had people come in my house and leave immediately after, like, and I'm like, well, what you just got here? They're like, I gotta go and never come back. And I
Right.
realized that my ancestors was like,
Bye.
get them out of here. So I
Goodbye.
love that for me, and I love that protection and the what I get from the ancestors. And like you were talking about, they assist us and will work on our behalf, but we got to do some work. And just
Have
like
to.
you talking about your children, we do that in this plane, with as above, so below. So they're
Hmm.
helping us and assisting us in the spirit realm, and we're working for the next generation, and it's all tied together. So that's ancestral work and why we do root work.
Yes,
So thank
ma'am.
you so much, Miss Toya.
You're
Tell us
quite
how we can
welcome.
find you on social media, and like if you got any classes or books or any of that good stuff coming up.
Okay, so my website is Roots and Stone. Is ROOTZANDSTONZ. So instead of a S is Z.com. Everything is on there, whether you need divination classes, any type of work done, consultations, things like that. You can follow me on TikTok. Now there's a lot of scammers on TikTok, but um, it's Iyamio, and then it's a slash roots and stones. So that's how you'll find me on
Mm,
TikTok. You can find me
I'll make sure I
on
have it in the description, y'all.
thank you. And on Instagram and Facebook under Roots and Stones. Um I do have two classes coming up in July. Uh the first one is on July 6th, that's doing cemetery work.
Ooh,
Um,
boom.
and the next one will be 2 weeks after that, and that is working with the spirit of the living and the dead.
I love
Because a
it.
lot of people tend to forget that we have a living spirit,
Mm,
and people can snatch your living spirit from you, just like they can snatch your ancestors from you if you're not careful.
mm,
You know, and people can work you like that, you're doing all types of things, and you don't understand what's going on. They're working. They're working your spirit.
right.
They're working your
Ooh,
spirit.
that's a good one. Y'all, so y'all got to go to the website. Make sure you check her out, and I'm gonna have that information down in the description. I'm glad you said something about the cemetery because I've been called to do that, but I just feel so weird walking in there with nobody, with nowhere to go. Like it's like, okay, I don't
Well, it's
know.
somewhere to go.
I'm like,
Soon
I
as you
just feel.
walked in, you've gotten where you need to go.
So I'm like, I may need to go to that one. I'm definitely gonna check your website out. And your mentorship, is that one on one, or are you doing group
It's one
with
on
that?
one.
Okay.
It's one on one. I'm actually starting back up accepting mentees on next month. Um, since my mother passed in September, so since my mother
Okay.
passed, I was like, taking time
Sure.
to grieve. But I'm starting that back up in September. So it's two different levels. It's one is a beginner, and then it's another one that for those who are more experienced. I also have pre-recorded classes on my website. So anything from Bible work to working with the saints to whatever. Um, and I'm starting to put more classes on my website. For the last 2, 3 years, I've taught over 100 and something classes.
Oh wow. Yeah, so you got busy because you had to catch up for trying to go
Yes,
live your life. They was like, get to work, you behind.
get to work, get it done. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
having me.
you. Thank you so much. And I know my audience is gonna love you. Y'all make sure y'all check out that description and go check out Miss Toya, Miss Iyamio. All of a sudden I can't talk, but yeah, you know what to
Okay.
do.
All
Until
right.
the
You have a
next
good
one.
day. Thank you so much.